What if the monsters our parents warned us about were real? What if the magical artifacts from epic poems weren't just stories but forgotten technology? For thousands of years, we've told tales of impossible creatures, lost cities, and supernatural events. We called them myths, fantasies to explain a world we didn't quite get. But what if they weren't fantasies at all? What if they were memories? Across the globe, every ancient culture left behind a legacy of stories. They told of giant birds that could snatch a person from the ground, fierce warrior women who lived entirely on their own, and a great flood that wiped the world clean. For centuries, we enjoyed these as fiction, but it turns out the evidence is piling up that these tales are way more than just stories. In many cases, they're chillingly accurate descriptions of real creatures, events, and technologies. Today, we're exploring 11 ancient myths that turned out to be shockingly true. If you love unraveling the mysteries of the past, do us a favor and hit that like button and subscribe so you won't miss what's next. Now, get ready to question everything you thought you knew. First up is one of the most famous tales from Greek mythology, Jason and the Argonauts and their quest for the Golden Fleece. The story goes that Jason was sent on an impossible mission to the distant kingdom of Colchis to steal a fleece of pure gold from a sacred winged ram. For millennia, we thought it was just a great story, a metaphor for achieving the impossible. But the myth seems to be based on a very real and ingenious practice. In the Svaneti region of modern-day Georgia, where ancient Colchis was located, mountain streams are rich with gold flakes. For thousands of years, local villagers developed a unique way to collect it. They would submerge sheepskins in the water, and the dense, oily wool was perfect for trapping the tiny gold particles. After a while, they'd pull the fleece out and hang it up to dry. Shimmering in the sun, it would look like a literal coat of gold. The golden fleece wasn't some magical artifact. It was a shockingly effective mining tool. The legend of Jason was likely inspired by a real journey to learn the secrets of this incredible gold harvesting technique. From the cold, dark waters of the North Sea, Norse legends told of a sea monster of unimaginable size, the Kraken. Sailors whispered tales of a beast so huge it could be mistaken for an island, with tentacles strong enough to pull a whole ship down to the seafloor. For centuries, the Kraken was dismissed as a spooky story told by sailors who'd been at sea a little too long. But they weren't just stories. They were describing a real creature. Deep in the ocean lurks an animal that perfectly matches the terrifying descriptions, the giant squid. Growing up to 40 feet long, the giant squid was long dismissed as myth because it lives in the crushing depths of the ocean, far from human eyes. It wasn't until 2004 that a live giant squid was finally photographed in its natural habitat, proving its existence once and for all. The legendary Kraken that haunted sailors' nightmares wasn't a myth. It was a real and genuinely terrifying titan of the deep. Imagine a bird so big and so powerful it could hunt people. It sounds like something from a horror movie, but for the Maori people of New Zealand, it was a very real part of their oral history. Their legends spoke of the puakai, a monstrous bird of prey that would swoop down from the sky to snatch and kill humans. For a long time, these stories were thought to be just cautionary tales to keep children from wandering off. But archaeology revealed a terrifying truth. The puakai was real. Today we know it as Haast's eagle, the largest eagle that ever existed. With a wingspan of nearly 10 feet and talons the size of a tiger's claws, it was an apex predator of terrifying proportions. Its main prey was the moa, a giant flightless bird, but scientists agree that the Haast's eagle was more than capable of killing and eating a human. The Maori legends weren't just stories. They were a historical record of a very real predator that once ruled the skies. The ancient Greeks told incredible stories of the Amazons, a tribe made up entirely of fierce female warriors who were equal to any man in a fight. They were master archers and horsewomen who, according to legend, lived in a society without men. For centuries, historians just assumed the Greeks made them up, a fantasy from a male-dominated society imagining its opposite. But out on the vast Eurasian steppes, archaeology has proven them wrong. Excavations across Russia and Central Asia have uncovered thousands of burial sites belonging to the Scythians, the real-life nomads who likely inspired the Amazon myths. Inside these ancient graves, archaeologists were stunned to find that a stunning 1 in 5 of the skeletons buried with full warrior gear, weapons, armor, and battle-scarred bones belonged to women. These weren't just ceremonial items, these women had lived, fought, and died as warriors, proving the core of the Amazon legend was absolutely true. For most of history, the city of Troy was just a place in a story. Made famous by the poet Homer in the Iliad, Troy was the setting for a legendary 10-year war between the Greeks and Trojans. But no matter how epic the tale was, most scholars believe Troy itself was pure fiction. That is, until the late 19th century, when a passionate and stubborn amateur archaeologist named Heinrich Schliemann decided to prove them all wrong. Using Homer's descriptions as his guide, Schliemann started digging at a large mound called Hisarlik in modern-day Turkey. Now his methods were famously destructive by today's standards, but he dug through layer after layer of ancient settlements and uncovered the ruins of a massive Bronze Age citadel. He had found it. He had found Troy. His discovery proved that the legendary city wasn't just a myth, forever changing how we view the line between story and history. How did the Vikings, the masters of the sea, navigate the treacherous North Atlantic, especially on cloudy days or during the endless twilight of a polar summer? Their sagas talk about a seemingly magical tool, a sunstone or solarstein, that could show you the sun's position even when it was completely hidden. For centuries, this sounded like pure fantasy, but science has found a real crystal with this exact magical ability: Iceland spar. This transparent mineral has a remarkable property called birefringence, which splits a ray of light in two. By rotating the stone and looking at the sky through it, a navigator can see how the light polarizes. The spot where the two beams of light line up perfectly reveals the sun's direction, even if it's below the horizon or behind thick clouds. A crystal found in a 16th century shipwreck even suggests these were used as real navigational tools. The Vikings' magical sunstone wasn't magic at all. It was applied physics at its most brilliant. Oral traditions are some of the oldest historical records we have. In northeastern Australia, the Gugu Badhun Aboriginal people have passed down stories for generations about a time when a pit of fire opened up in the ground, choking the air with a deadly haze and sending rivers of fire across the land. Sounds like a classic creation myth, doesn't it? Well, geologists investigating the area found that this story is actually a startlingly precise account of a real event. Using modern dating techniques, scientists confirmed that the Kinrara volcano in Queensland erupted around 7,000 years ago. The details in the story, from the crater opening up to the 34-mile-long lava flows that would have looked exactly like fiery rivers, perfectly match the geological evidence. This means the Gugu Badhun people passed this story down accurately for nearly 230 generations, making it one of the oldest and most astonishingly accurate oral histories ever documented. In Japanese folklore, the terrifying earthquakes that plague the islands are caused by a giant, troublemaking catfish named Namazu, who lives in the mud deep beneath the earth. The myth says that the god Takamikazuchi holds the giant fish down with a sacred stone, but every now and then when the god lets his guard down, Namazu thrashes his tail and causes the ground to shake. Of course, a giant catfish isn't literally causing earthquakes, but this myth isn't about being literal. It's a powerful metaphor that gave people a way to understand a very real and frightening geological truth. The legend became incredibly popular after the devastating 1855 Edo earthquake, when artists created thousands of woodblock prints of the catfish. The myth of Namazu gave a face to the invisible and unpredictable forces of nature, turning a terrifying natural disaster into a story that helped people process and understand the world around them. Sticking with Japanese folklore, few creatures are as famous or as feared as the kappa. These water imps are said to live in rivers and ponds, waiting to pull unsuspecting children who wander too close to the water's edge. It sounds like a classic scary story told to make kids behave. But what if the thing that inspired this cautionary tale was a real animal? Many now believe the legend of the kappa came from sightings of the Japanese giant salamander. And this thing is a living monster, a massive amphibian that can grow up to 5 feet long. It's elusive, powerful, and known to be aggressive, snapping at things with its powerful jaws. If you were living in ancient Japan and caught a fleeting glimpse of this huge, strange-looking creature in the murky river water, you might very well think you saw a child-snatching demon. Across the ancient world from Greece to Mesopotamia, Old texts describe a simple but powerful medicine: clay. Doctors and healers would prescribe certain types of earth and clay for everything from disinfecting wounds to curing internal sickness. For a long time, this was dismissed as primitive folk medicine, but it turns out modern science is proving those ancient healers right. Researchers have discovered that specific mineral-rich clays have powerful antibacterial properties. Some of these clays are so effective they can even kill antibiotic-resistant superbugs like MRSA. The clay essentially smothers the bacteria, creating an environment where they just can't survive. This discovery proves our ancestors had a sophisticated understanding of natural medicine that we are only now beginning to fully appreciate. Maybe the most universal myth of all is the story of a great flood. From the Epic of Gilgamesh in Mesopotamia to Noah's Ark in the Bible, and in the traditions of cultures from India to the Americas, the tale of a world-destroying flood is a shared memory of humanity. For centuries, most people have long assumed it was a purely religious or symbolic story. But the geological evidence suggests that a massive, catastrophic flood really did happen in our distant past. The leading theory is the Black Sea Deluge. Scientists believe that around 7,600 years ago, as the last ice age ended, the rising Mediterranean Sea broke through a natural dam at what is now the Bosporus Strait. Seawater poured into the Black Sea, which was then a much smaller freshwater lake, with the force of 200 Niagara Falls. This would have raised the water level by hundreds of feet, flooding huge areas of land and destroying countless prehistoric settlements almost overnight. This single, terrifying event is a prime candidate for the real-world disaster that planted the seeds of flood myths all around the world. The line between myth and reality is way thinner than we ever thought. These stories prove that our ancestors weren't just making things up, they were recording their world in the most powerful way they knew how. If these connections blew your mind, smash that like button and be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss another journey into the past's greatest mysteries. From a golden fleece that was actually a clever mining tool to a monstrous bird that was a real-life super predator, the myths of our ancestors are filled with forgotten truths. These tales were warnings, historical records, and scientific observations, all rolled into one. They remind us that even the most fantastical stories can have their roots in something real. So the next time you hear an ancient legend, listen a little closer. You might just be hearing an echo of the truth.